Welcome back to the 10-second runoff powered by Culture Media with your host, Joe Mitchell, producer Magic Mike Ishiaza. There's Brogan Bourgeois for you. Happy late Thanksgiving, Black Friday, heading into Cyber Monday. We got merch on the website. Make sure you go get that. We did miss 2 episodes, man. We missed 2 live shows. I was sick last Sunday. Rookie mistake. You don't get sick, right? You can't do that. And then Wednesday, we were setting up the shop. We do have a store here in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, Cards and Culture. So hopefully y'all, anybody local came through and supported us for that. But yeah, we do have a store here. So Wednesday we were setting up for Thanksgiving and Black Friday. The set was unavailable. Moving forward, we're 2 shows a week though. So let's get into it. Brogan, James Madison's going bowling, bro.
Yes. We talked about how they didn't deserve to be on that ban going from FCS to FBS to begin with. So the fact that they're going to go bowling is huge. They got the Fun Belt Championship at Troy this Saturday, so that should be good. Just really happy that they got that. I mean, it took 3 appeals and 3 times in charm, I guess. Happy for the boys.
Well, there wasn't enough 6-win teams. There wasn't enough teams bowl eligible in FBS, so they got their they found their way in. They backdoored. My question is, are they going to be eligible for college football playoff rankings? Because to me, that's what matters. I'm so curious to see where they would have been ranked. If they are eligible for that. Tulane went to the Rose Bowl last year and beat USC. So we've seen upsets happen. Not saying that I think James Madison would do that, but I'm curious as to where they would end up in their bowl game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's just all speculation. If they beat Troy, they definitely would have been higher ranked. But I mean, we just wouldn't know. But I'm just glad that they made it in total. Next year, I mean, they'll be playing the same similar strength of schedule where they went 12-0 and then 11-1. So they have the respect to get like a decent ranking going into the season. So hopefully they can get a look at hopefully they just sniff 12, but if they get there, they'll just get pummeled.
Yeah. They have 2 losses in their first 2 seasons. So 2 losses in total is pretty damn good. How long until they get snatched up by conference expansion and realignment and all that? I don't think it's far, to be honest with you.
Me neither. I don't know. I think that's like the ACC. I mean, they could get picked up pretty quick.
Yeah.
A couple 6-6 seasons. The recruiting would get better, the whole 9, and then at that point, the stars are the ceiling. So all good going forward for them.
Yeah. All right. So I know you love Pac-12 After Dark, Oregon State, all that. Jonathan Smith is moving over to Michigan State. Thoughts there?
I think that's good for him. I mean, he's dodging all the situation of not being in a conference going forward and putting up with all those problems. So that's good. And Michigan State just needs help. I think he's a good coach. So I think he can do a fairly good job of trying to get that train back on its tracks because it's derailed and imploding on the sides right now.
Yeah, he had a great year last year. He was 10-3 in 2023, 8-4 this year. He's going to have to go to Michigan State and right the ship in a much more competitive conference, and he's not getting away from Oregon and Washington. They'll be there in the Big Ten next year. So this gets, to me, this gets really, really interesting. He's going to be having to compete against Michigan, Ohio State, Penn State, Oregon, and Washington. So considering what he's done in the Pac-12 over the last 4 or 5 years outside of 2023, they've been a very average team. I think he's a good coach, but they've been a very average team with him leading the charge. So I'm curious to see if Michigan State can come back to a 9-10 win program or if they just kind of chill around 7-8 wins.
Yeah, that's where I haven't looked at the contract numbers. I don't even know if they're public yet, but we'll see how much pressure it is for him to get that quickly. Yeah. Because the higher the number is, the quicker they're going to want it.
Yeah. Staying on the coaching carousel here, Mike Elko is actually going to Texas A&M. There's a lot of talk last night about Mark Stoops getting that deal, and the switch up. Like news broke that Mark Stoops was going to be the next head coach at Texas A&M. Then he released something saying he wasn't going to Kentucky, or he was staying at Kentucky, not going to A&M, and that was like shocking considering everybody had already heard that he was going to be the next head coach at Texas A&M. And now they moved on to Mike Elko. It all happened really, really quickly. I think that's a great hire. We both said that 2-3 weeks ago.
Yeah, that's what we put his hat in the ringer there was like 4 names that we kind of threw out there, and we both landed on Elko. So it props to us. Always feels good when your opinion kind of is seen and gets right. And I think there's a lot of pressure on A&M and be a coach for that school, as we just saw with Jimbo. But I think he has the ability to at least do better than what he has done. I think it's only up from here for them.
Yeah, 16-9 as the head coach at Duke. Look, he's going to have a lot more tools at A&M. He's going to be able to recruit better. He'll have the administration behind him. He's going to have all the money in the world, like literally one of the best jobs in the country. So if he can't get it done there, it's not because Texas A&M in a good spot. It's because maybe we thought he was a little bit better than he is. I think he's going to do a great job there, though.
Agreed.
All right, staying on coaches in the SEC, specifically the SEC West, which I guess is actually disappearing going into next year. But Jeff Lebby, well, had he stayed at Oklahoma, he would be in the SEC as well. But he's moving over to Mississippi State as the head coach. This will be his first head coaching job, but just like notable stints that he's done. He was at UCF in 2018 and 19 when they won the fake championship and beat Auburn in the bowl game. He was at Ole Miss in 2020 and 2021, and he's been at Oklahoma since. So this is a guy that puts together serious offenses. I think you could see – you're not going to see the air raid come back at Mississippi State, but I do think you see way better offensive play. One thing that I would have loved to see was I would have loved to see Will Rogers in that Mississippi State offense with Jeff Lebby as the head coach.
Yeah, because he hit the portal right after the game, right? Like he's like, I'm out.
Yeah, he's out.
I think if he stayed, he would have had a good chance to succeed in that offense and improve or create draft stock for himself. So it's kind of sad that he left. I don't know who's going to pick him up, but
yeah,
I'm happy that Mississippi State's kind of moving in the right direction after the year they've had. So
yeah, 100%. Got a comment in the chat. Jamie Chadwell to Duke? ? Did that just break?
Jamie Chadwell.
Did that just?
No, I think that's a. Let's see, Jamie Chadwell.
Yeah, I saw Mississippi State ruled him out right before a couple of days ago before Jeff Lebby took the job there. That would be interesting coming from Coastal. Coastal's got one of the a seriously high-powered offense. They always hang a ridiculous amount of points.
Yeah, that's where I was like, I didn't even see that, but I kind of get the feel that that hire would have that kind of Florida feel where you take a risk when like a Billy Napier does well in a lower conference and just see how they perform.
Yeah, well, maybe they should learn something from Florida. That doesn't seem to have worked out for them.
We'll get to that like when we talk about that game. I don't like their defensive coordinator and his kind of path.
Let's jump to it. Let's jump to it.
Yeah. Okay, so the Florida State game, 12-0 at one point. I feel like Florida played not to lose. You would have swore they won the Super Bowl after they got that safety. Their defensive coordinator was at ULL with Napier, went to Southern Miss for a little bit, and then did like a stint under Kirby at some point. The dude's 30 years old, and I just don't I don't know how you get that DC job in an SEC school. And then if you do, it makes sense to as why they were ranked 126 in run, 128th in the pass, 130th overall. Like there was so much compounding bad defense where I think he is kind of in the same boat as the LSU defense coordinator. Somebody's going to have to bite the bullet for the season. I think it's going to be him. Yeah,
and even Billy Napier, I think Billy Napier takes a lot of the brunt of the problems at Florida, and rightfully so. He's the head coach. But I think he's actually a really good coach. He's a great recruiter. But I can't defend him when it comes to his hires or lack thereof. Like he got there and didn't hire an OC. He was calling the plays. So I think he needs to learn how to delegate a little bit more because, like you said, this isn't the Sun Belt. This is the SEC now. This is big boy football. And for somebody as good of a coach as he is, he can't squander this opportunity.
Correct.
And
we're 100% on the same page there.
And to be honest, I don't know how much longer he has. I think if he has if he wins 6 or 7 games next year, that's a wrap.
Yeah, because I had their season total at 5.5, and I took the over. I thought they would have 6. And when I saw their last 3 games, I was like, they're not going to sniff it. Even with Jordan going down. I was like, this is just. And then, I thought they could it until I think it's Mertz. Mertz broke his collarbone.
Yeah.
Got sandwiched on that big hit play 2 weeks ago now.
Yeah.
And that's where like that game, it was hard to watch. It was closer than I think 9-point shows. They had a possession, Florida did at midfield after a great defensive stint, which was not seen all year. And they ran a trick play, double reverse pass that lost 15 yards, which they ended up punting. Florida State drives down the field and scores.
Yeah.
If you gain 5 or 6 yards like they did every time between ETN and the other backup,
Montrell
they didn't
Johnson.
need to throw the ball. Yeah, they did not need to throw the ball that game, but their play calling forced them to do that, which is just unfortunate.
Yeah, and they've been solid in the run this year too. Like that's the run alone is how they beat Tennessee. So why they didn't lean on that in when they could is beyond me. Couple other games that were way closer than they needed to be. Washington hosted Washington State, and that one was 24-21.
Mm-hmm. Sorry, yeah, that was also played not to lose. I mean, you have everything in your power to win that game. The last 2 weeks we saw kind of Penix's demise as a Heisman candidate. He's played good, but he didn't play great.
Yeah, I was going to get to that. I was going to get to that about Michael Penix Jr. He was at one point he was leading the race, the Heisman race. Right now he's sitting 1,500 behind number 2. So Bo Nix and Jayden Daniels are in terms of odds. Bo Nix and Jayden Daniels are like neck and neck for the Heisman right now. And Michael Penix Jr., who was again right in the mix, there's a pretty wide gap.
Yeah.
They're gonna get that rematch. I don't know if Washington is gonna be able to. I don't think they're gonna find themselves in the playoff at this point. Look, if I'm power rating Washington and Oregon, I think Oregon's a much better football team right now. Washington, they snuck away with a win early in the season against Oregon, and I hate even saying this because I picked Washington to win the Pac-12 preseason. I didn't anticipate them having to play Oregon twice. I don't see a way Washington beats Oregon next week.
Me neither. Oregon's, I think, a 7.5-point favorite, and I think they could cover it by 2 touchdowns. They're dangerous right now, and Bo Nix is playing for his Heisman, and that's always a scary person to go up against. So I think Oregon handedly beats Washington this weekend.
Yeah, we'll cover that more on Wednesday because I have a lot to say about that one. All right, number 8, Alabama at Auburn, Iron Bowl. To me, this is – look, I know the game, Michigan versus Ohio State, is widely regarded as one of, if not the best rivalry in college football. As somebody who isn't a fan of either Alabama or Auburn, I think that's the best rivalry in college football.
It's just the in-state situation where your whole state is literally divided. You either go to Alabama or you go to Auburn, and you swear and live by it day in and day out. That was one of the worst officiated, best games I watched in a very long time. I was losing hair 5 minutes and down in that game. 4th and 31 is now the new kick 6.
Yeah.
On the 10-year anniversary, it was just the fact that they kind of practiced that play and the Gravedigger, what a great name for it. But Milroe came out, he gave you 260, 2 touchdowns with 100 plus on the ground. He did what he had to do. It went from really, really me hating that game to just awesome. But the officiating took away from that game a lot. To start the game, we had a horrible, horrible face mask that they didn't call. Burt was in bounds on that catch. There were 2 unnecessary roughness on 1 punt that they didn't call. And there was 3 men in motion that didn't get called as well. And then the big play, which was the 15-yard sack on the missed snap, there's a new clip where the safety comes down and claps his hands, and that's not allowed. So
yeah, that's a delay
just
game.
On our side, outside of the face mask. Yeah. So that changes it from 2nd and goal from the 8 to 2nd and goal from the 4, where we're looking at a completely different ball game. Then we don't need a Hail Mary to the back corner. Now I'm sure there was missed on Auburn as well. So I don't know. Between watching some NFL games today and the officiating over the past year of college football, it just needs to be cleaned up as a whole. It's taken the limelight away from the boys a little bit in the games themselves. So I just think some stuff needs to be changed, looked at harder. But it was a phenomenal game. We control our own destiny to an extent. I mean, if somehow I think Georgia, my heart says Alabama's going to win. My mind says Georgia's going to win this game. But we need at least one loss, maybe two, to even sniff the playoffs. So, which we'll talk about on Wednesday. But I'm glad we got to where we were supposed to. That was the main thing. Have a one loss going into the conference championship. So, rivalry lived up to it. The cow pasture is always horrible to play in.
Yeah, I pulled up ESPN's FPI just to kind of see where Alabama and Georgia sat in the Football Power Index and what the potential line would look like. And it was completely just, there's no credibility here because their number one overall in FPI is Ohio State with Michigan at 2. Yeah, I mean, this is a horrible metric. ESPN's FPI, we don't even have, we shouldn't even be talking about this right now, but it just pissed me off so bad. Ohio State's number 1, Michigan number 2, Oregon 3, Penn State 4, Georgia 5, Bama 6. What are we doing?
Yeah, is it up to date? I don't know.
100% up to date. They list Ohio State as 11-1, Michigan is 12-0.
Yeah, I don't know. That index doesn't make sense to me. I'm not going to try and understand it.
I have
especially as skewed as it is. So
this is why I came here to check to see where they would be power rated based on favorability. This is clearly horrid. But I have seen a couple with Georgia and Bama sitting at 1 and 2, even after the Auburn game. And I really don't think that's crazy. I think when you're looking at a rivalry game in a vacuum, anybody can win on any given day in a rivalry like that. I mean, you were literally talking about the difference between Auburn having a 6-6 season and Alabama's playoff hopes. That all came down to 4th and 31. And that's just what rivalries are. And it's why college football is so awesome. It's why the game day experience in college is better than going to an NFL game. All of that, the fan involvement, everything, because it comes down to rivalries and people grow up liking certain teams, and 60 miles can be the difference in love or hate of a program. And I think that is why college football is the best sport. But when it comes down to who are the best teams in the country, I think there's not where they should be ranked, but if you're just looking at best teams top to bottom, I think if you're not putting Alabama 3 or 4, you're out. Like you're wrong to me. I think they're right there in the mix, and they can beat anybody.
Yeah, and I fully agree. And then I saw something today where it's like, we all know that if they beat Georgia, they deserve to be one of the 4 best teams in the country competing for the national championship. However, if Texas are to win out, if Oregon are to win out, and then Michigan wins, and then I'm missing somebody. Like one of those is supposed to, you're telling
Florida State,
the country that Florida State wins out. You're telling the country, and then you put Bama in and take one of those out. You're saying that during season and in season games don't matter, which is going to be a huge issue. If you're going to put if Texas wins out, but Alabama beats Georgia and Alabama makes it, Texas doesn't, you're taking 5 steps backwards. So it's stuck between a rock and a hard place. The committee needs Georgia to win just to kind of save their ass a little bit and make the decision process a lot easier. But if they don't, and everybody who's supposed to win this weekend does, we're in for a world of hurt Sunday. There will not be a lot of NFL games watched because everything going forward with college football is going to depend on it.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying, but I don't know if I necessarily agree. I think if Alabama does find a way into the playoff, it doesn't say that in-season games don't matter. I think it actually says the opposite. Texas beat Alabama in a close game in Tuscaloosa. That hurts. But Alabama also beat LSU at home. the number one offense in the country in terms of scoring and total offense, held them to 28 points, beat them pretty handily. And then if they go to the SEC championship and beat the number one team in the country, a team that hasn't lost since 2021, I think you have the wins to get there, and Texas doesn't necessarily have that. Like their biggest game of the year was Oklahoma, and outside of Alabama, but their biggest game of the year was Oklahoma, and they'd lost that one.
Mm-hmm. And that's where the 12-team expansion will solve everything. All these, you can bicker about being 5 or 6 or 5 and 8 or 5 or 8 and all that, and it's fine. You really don't care. You're in. But right now, this is why they're making it 12, because they're trying to make, in my eyes, make their job easier. So I don't know. I agree with you. Of course, I think that we're the better team than Texas. They have a lot more bad wins than we do. But it's just, if you leave them out and put us in, there's a whole state mad at you, there's a whole conference mad at you, and it's just, at that point, it is what it is. So yeah, I can't wait for this weekend to be over so we can talk about actual games instead of predictions, because we've been talking about this for 3 weeks, 4 weeks.
100%.
Because we're all seeing the finish line.
100%. I agree. We just got we got a comment in the chat. It said, "Did you say Ohio State won, Michigan 2 on Disney's FPI?" That's hilarious. Taking a shot at ESPN because Disney bought them. Yes, it is a bad metric. I did say that. That is not my ratings, but I did say that. All right. Moving on here. You had a little fun fact.
Yes. So I saw this, and there's 4 teams that have won 8 games the last 4 years. Which number 1, you're Ohio State, of course Georgia, Bama sneaks in there, and then this 4th one really threw me for a loop, and I'm wondering if you can. I won't give you a conference hint unless you want it, but the 4th one really shocked me. Do you got any clue?
Of a team who's won 8 for the last 4 years. There's only 4?
Last 4. There's only 4. Including this year.
Yeah. It would be easy to guess like a Oregon or something like that. Even like a Penn State, they really only lose 2 at a time. But I do think, and obviously you're going to tell me if I'm right or wrong, but I think there's one team that never really gets to 10, but they never lose more than 4. Always have a good linebacker core, always have a decent O-line. Is it NC State?
Yeah.
It's NC State.
Yeah, I got sent that statistic this morning, and I was like, okay, yeah, talking about this on the show, there's no way he gets this. He's kind of like the armpit / bicep of the ACC. But yeah, it's NC State, man.
Come on now.
Yeah, I got that sent, and I was like, how? Like, because they're so relevantly irrelevant.
Yeah.
Because they win what they're supposed to, and they lose the games they're supposed to. And it happens to be that all the games that they lose allow the 3 or 4 losses.
Yeah.
And so this year they're 9-3, and they were 3 points off from being in the ACC championship against Florida State this week. They lost to Louisville by 3.
Mm-hmm.
And
to me,
thought I'd be able to stump you, but
to me, it's even more impressive that they won 9 games this year because they did it after losing Devin Leary to Kentucky, which I think is really impressive. I had
their
this
QB situation the last 2 years have been nuts. Like, it's like, oh, you have 1? No, you got 2. Nope, get the grad transfer in. Then this year, oh, you got 1? Nope, 2? Nah. So the roll with the punches of that program is the most impressive in the country, by far.
Yeah, they're one of the most consistently good teams without any of the love or without any of the benefit of like going to a New Year's Six game or finding themselves in the playoff or anything like that. But they're always capable of ruining somebody's season. I got into this argument on this show a year ago or so about NC State because I don't remember who they were playing, but I said they are very capable of ruining this team's season. And the guy I was talking to said, no shot, NC State's horrible. And I was like, bro, one, look at them this year, but also look at them historically. Like, they don't at least in recent history, like they go to a bowl every year, which like a bowl, like making a bowl isn't the end all be all. Like you can be a mediocre team and hit 6 wins and go to a bowl, but they are consistently at 8. And that's the only reason I remember that.
Yeah, that's nuts. I'm impressed. Good stuff.
Now,
Joe knows ball.
Now, one of my oddball scenarios from the last couple weeks was, is there a way that a one-loss Louisville who beats Florida State in the championship finds backdoors their way into the playoff? And I thought there was a way. That's until Ray Davis and Kentucky took it to them this week. They went to Louisville, beat them 38-31. It's tough.
And
man.
that's where, like we were talking about, us looking bad against Auburn. Georgia didn't look great against Georgia Tech. Like all these games mean way more.
Yeah.
So if you're gonna judge a season on conference or the rivalry weekend, Washington looked horrible.
Yeah.
Oregon played up to their Texas played bad for a half. Like they were all great games and what they were supposed to be played. And the Kentucky Louisville, that's the only true upset out of all of those.
Yeah.
And it just happened to be Louisville, who was trying to throw their hat in the ringer if they did something crazy against Kentucky and then next week against Florida State.
Yeah.
But it's the beauty of college football, like you just said. It's the greatest sport on the planet, and a mediocre Kentucky team played their Super Bowl and won. So all the power to them.
Yeah. Kentucky's a great spot too. I wouldn't say it's like a great coaching, like it's not a great job, but it's a great spot. They get a lot of transfers over there. They're never pulling in amazing recruiting classes or anything, but there's a lot of dudes that end up at Kentucky before they leave college football. And Ray Davis, you see exactly what that does to that program. Again, one of those teams that's probably not going to compete for the SEC championship anytime soon, probably not going to find their way into a New Year's Six bowl, but good enough to beat really good teams too.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's get into, now that the regular season's over, still got about a week or so before finalists for most awards come out till the Heisman Awards ceremony. But the regular season's over. Everybody's played 12 games. If you made it to a conference championship, you're going to get that 13th game to kind of boost your stats. But let's talk about some of those awards. So starting with the Heisman, I mentioned it earlier. You have two guys that are kind of sitting neck and neck. Bo Nix has minus 150 odds. Jayden Daniels has plus 120 odds. And then you get a big drop-off to Michael Penix Jr. And then a big drop-off to three guys tied at plus 15,000 odds. They're not going to win it. But Marvin Harrison Jr., Carson Beck, and Jalen Milroe all sitting right in there. So it's a two-man race. Bo Nix and Jayden Daniels. What's your take there?
I think so. After the Georgia State game, the odds shifted as Jayden Daniels is the favorite.
Yep.
Rightfully so. He was responsible for 8 touchdowns. This week, I think Bo Nix played a better team, and I'm looking at his stat line. He gave you 370 and 2 passing touchdowns along with a rushing touchdown. That stat line this week was better, just objectively going against teams, better than Jayden's versus A&M. However, Jayden Daniels, in my opinion, is the Heisman winner, and the entire SEC thinks that as well. And I think this week, whatever, Bo Nix is playing for his Heisman. This weekend, he is playing for it. If he goes off against Washington, I think they'll give it to him. If he has a mediocre game, Jayden has a chance, but Jayden will be robbed of a Heisman if they give it to Bo Nix. Statistically, he is killing this country, killing the whole SEC. He had an amazing season. I'm saying that with an Alabama jersey on, seems sacrilegious, but he is and clears the rest of the field for the Heisman winner.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think the reason the odds sit that way is because Vegas knows Bo Nix is going to go play another one and Jayden's not. But if you're judging it off of the first 12 games, even if you're just looking at yards per game, touchdowns in totality, rushing yards per game, efficiency, all that kind of stuff, what you've done to your offense, it feels like Jayden Daniels is being punished because of his defense, which, look, I get it. He lost 3 games. None of those three were his fault, though. Against Alabama, he rushed for over 100 yards, passed for over 200. That was the biggest game of the year. I'll run through the list here. He's number one amongst college football quarterbacks, including Bo Nix and Michael Penix Jr. in efficiency, passing touchdowns, and points responsible for. Also third in passing yards. He completed 15 passing touchdowns to Brian Thomas Jr., 14 to Malik Neighbors, making them 1 and 2 in touchdown receptions. Like, they're the two leaders in receiving touchdowns. On top of that, Jayden finished 21st in the entire nation, including running backs and rushing yards, at 1,134 rushing yards. He led LSU to the number one scoring offense in the nation while putting up the most yards, 6,573 of any team in college football. So that's scoring and total offense. In explosive plays, so plays of 20-plus yards, he had 90 of them by himself. The player with the second most only had 61. So I want to say Jayden had, coming into this week, he had 20 touchdowns of over 20 yards. Bo Nix had 17 completions of over 20 yards. Look, it's not close. Like, it's simply not close. Bo Nix is going to win the Heisman, and that is a sacrilege to college football.
Yeah, that last stat, that's the first time I heard it tonight. That is absurd. 20 touchdowns of over 20 yards. Bo Nix has 17 completions of over 20 yards.
And I think Jayden had one or two more in this past game against A&M, which, by the way, A&M had a top 15 defense in the country. But we're not going to talk about that because A&M wasn't ranked.
Exactly. And that's, like, the SEC defenses this year have not lived up to what they're supposed to. Florida, LSU, we know that. However, the Pac-12 is known for games, the lines being at 72, 76, and them being able to cut through a defense. That's not the SEC, but Jayden did that this year, which is just unheard of. So the only guy to do it before was Joe, and he did it without his feet.
Yeah.
And Jayden said, all right, hold beer. I can do it with my feet too.
Yeah.
And I will. And just getting punished for getting absolutely hit on a couple games, and he just got right back up and did it again. So if it's the best player in college football, Jayden Daniels clears. But we'll see how political it gets over the next 2 weeks.
And so that's why I think it gets tricky, because I think the verbiage matters. The Heisman is the most outstanding player. The Maxwell is the best player. So I think Jayden's going to win the Maxwell. In terms of Heisman, I don't know. I would make the argument that Jayden was the most outstanding player in college football, but we'll see. We'll see what happens. One more stat, because everybody loves to throw in that when talking about the Heisman, everybody loves to throw in that Bo Nix has played the most games of anybody in FBS history. He's had the longest career, all that kind of stuff. Awesome. One more stat about Jayden. This season, he became the first player in FBS history to pass for 12,000 yards and rush for 3,000 yards in a career. So if we're going to talk about Bo Nix's career, let's talk about Jayden's too. And neither of those stats should matter because it's about this season. But if we're talking careers, let's talk careers.
Yeah, and the best thing I saw was before this weekend, somebody had the audacity to tweet that Jayden Daniels would not start for Washington, Oregon, or Oregon State at quarterback. However, at Arizona State, he upset Oregon.
That is true. He also had Brandon. He also had Brandon Ayuk at Arizona State. I don't think that argument makes any difference, though. I don't think that argument makes any difference.
Because the two wide receivers you got at LSU right now make up for Ayuk. I mean, they're
100%.
both going to be absurd NFL talent. So
100%. What I will say about that is I'm not going to disagree. I don't know who tweeted that, but whoever said that, I'm not going to disagree with him. I don't think Jayden Daniels would go into Oregon or Washington and take the starting job. But I don't think Michael Penix Jr. or Bo Nix is going to LSU and taking the starting job from him. When you have guys as elite as those three guys are, you don't take them off the field. Like, that's just a dumb argument.
Yeah. And, I mean, if you're looking at the careers between the both of them as well, they flipped conferences. One went to the harder one went to the easier one. Let's call it what it is. So you got to give props to the guy that came to the harder conference.
One went from the Pac-12 to the SEC. Two of them went from the best two conferences in college football to the Pac-12. Michael Penix Jr. went from the Big Ten to the Pac-12. Bo Nix went from the SEC to the Pac-12. Say what you want. All right.
Exactly.
Doak Walker, that's best running back in the country. There's some semifinalists. They're gonna list the finalists. I want to say this coming week, after the championship games. You have Jonathan Brooks from Texas, Taj Brooks from Texas Tech, Marcus Carroll, Georgia State, Blake Corum from Michigan. Wow, I couldn't get that out. Ollie Gordon from Oklahoma State, Omarion Hampton from North Carolina, R.J. Harvey from UCF, Damian Martinez, Oregon State, and Cody Schrader, Mizzou. Notice I didn't say Aldrich Estime. He got snubbed. He's got the third most touchdowns of anyone in the nation. I find that very, very interesting. To me, give the award to Ollie Gordon. He's got 20 touchdowns and 1,580 rushing yards. He's got the second most touchdowns and the first most rushing yards. Doesn't seem like, to me, there's other good running backs, of course, but give him the award.
Yeah, I'm right there. I'm looking at the list that you made for us to talk about, and I'm looking at him, Blake Corum, and Cody Schrader kind of as my top three.
Yeah.
And I think it'll just be between him and Blake Corum. Blake Corum got the touchdowns, but almost 1,600 rushing yards is absurd, and he deserves the award.
And look, frankly,
and he'll get some more touches this week too, because they got Texas. So he'll be able to boost it a little bit if they look into that.
And look, honestly, Blake Corum, I wouldn't be mad if he won it either. He has what was it? He has 22 touchdowns. That's first in the country. He doesn't have the rushing yards because he splits time with Donovan Edwards, which makes it so much more impressive that he has the most touchdowns in the country. So I wouldn't be mad either way about Ollie Gordon or Blake Corum. But if one of those two don't win it, then what are we doing? I mean, it's unbelievable. But they'll both play this weekend, so interested to see how that plays out. All right, last one we'll talk about here is the Blitnikoff. I'm going to just run through the names, then we can kind of get into this conversation. As semifinalists, you have Brock Bowers, Luther Burden, Keon Coleman, Troy Franklin, Marvin Harrison Jr., Xavier Leggett, Malik Neighbors, Roma Dunze, Brian Thomas Jr., and Malik Washington. What are your thoughts?
I think Malik Neighbors deserves it. I think Marvin Harrison will win it. Just because he's had the most notability through this year, and I think these awards are more publicity than deserving. And I think the fact that he was in the Heisman race gives him a more, race, I say that loosely. The fact that his name was mentioned with the Heisman and the absolute spotlight he's had on him this whole year after having the year he had last year gives him the driver's seat for this award. But I think Malik Neighbors deserves it.
Yeah. Look, Marvin Harrison Jr. was the favorite going into the year to win the Blitnikoff. And I will say this. He is the best wide receiver prospect. He might be the best wide receiver prospect we've seen in the last 5-10 years. Dude is real. He's an NFL profile. If I'm an NFL organization who needs a wide receiver, who doesn't need a wide receiver, and he's on the board, I'm taking him. He should be a top 5 pick. He should be all of those things. He is elite. But if he wins the Blitnikoff over Malik Neighbors, Troy Franklin, or Roma Dunze, then it is simply a popularity contest because he hasn't had a better season than any of those three. Malik Neighbors has 14 touchdowns. That's tied for second in the country, and 1,546 yards receiving. That's over 100 yards than the next guy. Troy Franklin, 14 touchdowns, tied for second. 1,349 yards. That's third. Roma Dunze, 13 touchdowns. That's sixth, but it's really third or fourth. Yeah, because it's just so many ties. And then he has 1,326 yards. Marvin Harrison Jr. he's not touching the yards. He does have 14 touchdowns, so that puts him in the mix. But when you're looking at both stats in unison, I mean, he's fourth at best.
Yeah, and so the winner of the awards, the finals come out this week, and then the awards are right before the Heisman.
Yeah, I want to say it's actually after the Heisman. Okay,
so unfortunately, that might be too long for Malik. The spotlight's going to continue. It kind of depends on the weekend games. If Ohio State gets into the playoff, which would then mean he gets more football.
Yeah.
So it's all of these awards this year. It's kind of the first year that I've kind of looked at the season through a magnifying glass, but you really get to see how political and popular contests these awards are going to be.
Yeah.
So
And look, I'm with you. I think Malik Neighbors should win it. But I wouldn't be mad if Troy Franklin or Roma Dunes won it. Roma Dunze won it. And honestly, I lean more Troy Franklin than I do Adunze. But if Malik or Troy won it, I'm good either way. If Marvin Harrison Jr. wins it, I'm salty. Like, that's just, yeah. All right. New power ratings for you this week. I don't know if you've seen these yet. These are mine. This is solely my opinion. Hopefully next season we're able to put some money aside and get a betting model made to where I'm not even using my opinion. It's just spitting out numbers for us. That would be great. But in my opinion, I'm going to go 1 through 10 here, and you tell me where I'm wrong. At 1, I'm leaving Georgia up there. So I have Georgia, Michigan, Oregon, Alabama. That's my top 4. Georgia, Michigan, Oregon, Alabama. Ohio State at 5, Texas at 6. So that would be my college football playoff graphic. They always show the 4 and then the 2. I don't know why they ever show the 2. They're not going. But yeah, Ohio State and Texas at 5 and 6. 7 through 10 for me is Washington, LSU. Yeah, I know LSU's got a horrendous defense. They also have an offense that keeps them in every game. Outside of the Florida State game, LSU's been in every game they played. Florida State at 9, and then Missouri at 10.
I've just been staring at your list as well. Yeah, the only thing that I can maybe disagree with is Texas and Ohio State could flip.
Okay.
In my opinion, but that's me nitpicking. I think this is an extremely accurate and good list.
I'm gonna go Ohio State's.
Everything.
I think Ohio State's offense. I think Ohio State's offense gives them the jump, but Texas' defense and Ohio State's defense are neck and neck to me. I think they're both really, really good defenses. To me, the one that I thought you were going to try and poke a hole in, and you may have been accurate in doing so, but is Florida State at 9. I'm very much expecting people to jump my ass for that one. But they lost Jordan Travis, and that matters when you're talking about which team is the best. If he had been out for 1 or 2 games, then I would probably look at it a little bit differently. If he was going to be back for the playoff, if they get there, I would look at it differently. But this is a team that if they get in as a 4 seed, they're just going to get routed. It sucks because I think they've been I've had them in my top 5 or 6 all year. But losing a quarterback like Jordan Travis hurts bad. They're 12-0, and I have them at 9, and I know that's a rough look, but they're not a top 5 team anymore.
No, you've lost a Heisman candidate. Like he was the whole year. Odds weren't great to take, betting wise. Yeah. But he was in the race the whole time. I agree. I mean, I watched the Florida game. That the reason it was close because they both had backup quarterbacks and it was in the swamp. Put that in the neutral ground with Jordan Travis, they win by 26, at least. Yeah. So I agree with that. I looked at it and I was like, oh no, but yeah, he was that offense. He was able to get the ball to Keon Coleman and the other transfer wide receiver Wilson. He was able to get it to where it needed to be. In the backup, there's multiple spots where his deer in the headlights. And so I get it. The Louisville game will be good. I hope Louisville wins, not for Bama's sake, but because Florida State does not deserve to be in the top 4 anymore, unfortunately. Yeah.
And then having Missouri in at 10, I can just already see people, because Missouri's not a sexy brand or anything, but I can already see people talking about Missouri. Look, there are only 2 losses before I even get to that, they have a semifinalist for the Doak Walker and the Blitnikoff. They have dudes. On top of that, there are only 2 losses this year are Georgia and LSU. Georgia's the number 1 team in the country. LSU's got the number 1 scoring and total offense in the country. Regardless of LSU's 3 losses, nobody outside of Florida State in week 1, and that's even arguable, has been able to shut down Jayden Daniels. And by the way, Jayden Daniels put up 400 yards against Florida State. So, look at the Alabama loss, Jayden Daniels balled. Look at the Ole Miss loss, Jayden Daniels put up 600 yards of total offense. I don't think the LSU loss to Missouri is a bad loss at all. The Georgia loss clearly isn't a bad loss. I think this is a really good team who played a complete Georgia team and the best offense in the country. And, it costs you. You put up 39 points, and I think they're a much better team than they're getting credit for.
Agreed.
All right, so next time we get together and talk, we'll have conference championship games to talk about. We have Alabama, Georgia. We have Texas and Oklahoma State, Washington, Oregon, Michigan, and nobody. And then we have Florida State and Louisville. So, what?
If I'm glad you got there. If anybody watched the Iowa-Nebraska game, you love football.
It's 13-10.
I love that you love football. The fourth quarter, both teams tried to lose. Also, didn't know Iowa's quarterback was 250. Might be the most unagile quarterback in college football. He tried to lose the game, and then Purdy's little brother said, I'll raise you.
Yeah.
And then they ran like a QB shift back 3 yards to get the ball in the middle of the field for the field goal kicker. If he fell 1 more yard back, that kick was no good. Like, that kicker made that by a yard or 2.
Yeah.
So I watched that fourth quarter of that game, and then I was like, I think that's all I got in me today. This was a horrible, horrible game. But, yeah, we'll talk about it on Wednesday. Michigan's going to have fun with that one.
Yeah.
I think the total's 36. And that means they're not expecting Iowa to score a touchdown. I think that has been like 6 points because the spread's 24.5.
100%.
So, realign the Big Ten, which I think they will with the switch, but put Penn State on the other side so I have something to care about in the Big Ten instead of just the Ohio State-Michigan rivalry at the end of the year.
Or just go with the Pac-12 model. Put the best 2 teams in the conference championship. Problem with that is you get Ohio State and Michigan playing in back-to-back weeks. But
love that. Hard to beat a team twice. Just mayhem.
Really hard to beat a team twice. You would just see 2 11-0 teams running out there with no game plan, trying not to win. just taking notes. That's where Connor Stallions comes in handy.
Oh God. Yep.
Yeah. All right, man. We'll wrap this thing up. We will see y'all Wednesday.